warm welcome to Mark Langdon's Bets Club, your one-stop shop for football betting insight in association with freesupertips.com. Plenty to get through. We're fresh off an international break. I'm hoping Mark is full of beans and ready to go. We'll be looking ahead to a full docket of Premier League action. The Champions League is underway soon. Mark will have an outright tip for that and plenty more goodness. Jack Reeve and Mark Langdon with you once again. Mark, it's been a while since we've been together. How are things to start?
Yeah, all right. I was following your journey back from Split with amazement at just how good you are. Phileas Fogg got nothing on you, Jack, the way you was going around the world there. But no, it's the international break has its place. Because I don't think you can moan about it and then be excited for the tournament because because you need to have the qualifiers to get to the tournament proper. So, I embrace the, I suppose I'm trying to think of the right word, sort of the lack of just relentlessness that you get from a domestic campaign. So, I'm all for the odd international break.
Well, it gives you a break as well, doesn't it? Which is probably the nice thing. I'm sure plenty of listeners will be wanting to hear your thoughts on Bellingham. We'll be getting onto him probably later on in the show when we discuss the Champions League. So excited for that. Why not get stuck straight into the Premier League action then? We'll start with our big match for this weekend. We're going to be taking a look at Everton against Arsenal. This one's Sunday, 4:30, 5-1 Everton, 8-15 Arsenal, 7-2 the draw. Mark, I think Arsenal will be chuffed with their start to the season, but a trip to Goodison is always a tough one, seemingly, for them.
Yeah, it is. Doesn't matter how well they're playing. Doesn't matter how badly Everton are playing. Lost on last 3 visits, not 1 in 5, 4 defeats in those 5. So clearly there is something about going to Goodison and the physicality of that test that's usually provided that Arsenal struggle with. And it'll be a good test, I think, for Mikel Arteta's team to see whether they have come on from last year, because you'll remember they lost that game, didn't they? Sean Dyche's first as manager of Everton. And yeah, it was a sort of typical game against Everton, that one, wasn't it? Where Arsenal dominated possession, but Everton scored from a set piece. And I expect them to try to do exactly the same again and just ruffle the Arsenal feathers.
Where are we at with Everton as a side, Mark, in terms of coming through the transfer window now, their start to the season? I know there were concerns for the side, certainly pre-season. Has your thoughts changed somewhat?
I still think they'll stay up, but it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to be like the last few years, really. Don't think they did enough in the summer transfer window. Beto looks a threat up front, I think. Puts himself about. Danjuma has got a touch of quality. We've seen that at times, playing for Villarreal and also when he was at Bournemouth. So there's a bit more there. But they've also lost players, Damari Gray, Iwobi, players that you probably wouldn't have wanted to have lost from the squad. I think if Everton stay up, it's the quality of the midfield that I think might just do it. Idrissa Gueye, you've got Garner in there, you've got Decore and Nana as well. That feels like it might just keep them up. And as we always say with Everton, the kind of the form and fitness of Dominic Calvert-Lewin or otherwise really is so important to them, because at his best he's a very good player, and Everton just haven't seen enough of that throughout the season. But I would say on Everton that they've probably played better than the results have suggested this season so far, and maybe a little bit unlucky to have so few points on the board as what they've got.
It feels from the outside looking in with Arsenal that Arteta has been kind of chopping and changing his side a little bit more. I'm not sure whether that's down to kind of depth or not knowing the strongest 11 yet. What have you made of that?
Yeah, I think that they probably a bit the opposite of Everton, where some of their performances maybe haven't warranted as many points as what they've got on the board. There's been some nervous moments, even in the wins against Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, Manchester United. That offside goal for Garnacho, if he's a couple of millimeters the other side of that line, the kind of outcome bias in all of us would have read that game completely differently. As it was, that was ruled out. Arsenal went up the other end, scored a couple of goals, and it looks great. But I don't think it was an amazing performance from the Gunners. Didn't feel like them at their absolute slickest. So I think that they're just trying. I think Arteta's just trying to work everything out. How does Declan Rice fit into that starting 11? Where does Kai Havertz play? Do you use an inverted fullback on the left-hand side? What happens on the right? The centre-back pairing. He is trying a few new things, even down to who should be the starting centre-forward, because Gabriel Jesus came on and scored against Manchester United. Now maybe he wasn't fit enough to start, but I thought that was a thumbs up really for the work that Nketiah had done previously. And he's got himself into the England squad, didn't he? But always think Arsenal just look a better side with Jesus in it. So I would expect Jesus now to be back in that starting 11.
I was surprised to see Arsenal at kind of a short for this fixture as the bookies are pricing up, considering that their struggles at Goodison over the years. What's your best bet for this one?
I'm going to go for goals, actually, over 2.5. If we have a look at Arsenal, 14 of their last 17 Premier League games, over 2.5 goals. And for Everton, they've missed 11 big chances already this season. So they are creating the opportunities, just need to start taking them. And in 2 games at Goodison, when they've actually lost 1-0 on both occasions, shots on target count 16-4 in their favour. I think at some stage, even if you don't rate the forwards at Everton, that will change. I'm not sure about them defensively, though, keeping Arsenal out. So surprised myself a little bit with this tip, because I was sort of thinking narrow Arsenal win. But the more I looked at it, the more I actually think that the overs is the value bet. So over 2.5 goals.
There we go. Let's take a look at the rest of the Premier League action. Early kickoff Saturday, Wolves against Liverpool. Mark, it feels as if Liverpool have kind of gone under the radar somewhat, if that's possible. I mean, a really solid start to the season. 3 wins and a draw. 3rd in the table, just 2 points behind City. I think there were maybe doubts around whether Klopp's side could keep pace, but so far, so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'd say this is a bit like the Arsenal situation. Certainly, in terms of the Newcastle game, could quite easily have lost that one. They stayed in it and then nicked a couple of goals at the end. Bournemouth, I watched the game against Bournemouth, and they did not start well in that game at all. Went 1-0 down, and it was looking a bit ropey for them. And you was wondering, what was going on as far as Liverpool were concerned. And by the end of that game at Chelsea, they looked like the ones that were happier with the point, I suppose, at Stamford Bridge. And then you look at then how they finished that game against Newcastle. They've then played really well against Aston Villa, and the season looks totally different. So they'll be really happy with the points they've got on the ball, because I don't think it was the easiest of starts. They've already got Chelsea and Newcastle away, out of the way, if you like. So, I think Jurgen Klopp, given all the noise around Henderson and Fabinho, and, Van Dijk's been suspended. So I think they'll be really happy with the points they've got on the board.
Will it continue this weekend against Wolves?
Yeah, I think it will. I'm going to go for Liverpool to win and both teams to score. Obviously, defensively would be the weakness for Liverpool. Wolves have created a fair few chances so far this season, but, they gave up a lot of shots against Crystal Palace, were played off the pitch when Brighton actually got their football going in that game at Molineux as well. So I'm going to go for Liverpool to win, both teams to score.
Good stuff. 3 o'clock Saturday kickoffs to get through. We'll start with Villa against Palace. Where are the expectations at with Villa now, Mark? Because I guess you could maybe bracket them in, with a Brighton and a Newcastle in terms of, I think expectations have really leapt up over the past season or two. They've got European football to contend with now. They're kind of in a situation where there's multiple things to have to deal with, and that could affect Premier League form. I mean, are we still expecting good things from Villa?
Well, I was listening to the radio coming on the Sunday of the last game, when they got beat 3-0 by Liverpool. I was shaking my head because the pundit Leon Osman was going on about how Unai Emery would have settled for this start. They're through in the Europa Conference League. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, they were playing Hibs, like, you know, they were going to get through. I don't think Aston Villa would have settled for 6 points from, you know, a possible 12. I mean, because they've been absolutely tonked on those 2 away days, haven't they? 5-1 at Newcastle, 3-0 at Liverpool. Those are not the results, really, of a team that, you know, that I think ambitions would be to, be up in that mix for top 6, maybe top 4. So, I would certainly wouldn't have thought that Villa would have settled for their start so far. And I'm going to say that the betting markets have been against Aston Villa. Big drift on them against Liverpool. Yeah, really not maybe as in love with them as what the neutrals were at the start of the campaign.
Does that make any kind of angles for this more attractive?
A difficult game, I think, against Crystal Palace. I was struggling to find a worthwhile punt. If you did want to have one, maybe it would be the draw. I just think Crystal Palace are a hard team to beat, and it might be worth taking the tip that the usually shrewd sort of betting market is against Aston Villa at the moment.
Okay, Fulham against Luton. Now, you know, I think the lazy opinion maybe was to say that Luton were going to really struggle in the Premier League this season. We have seen it so far, coupled with the fact that Burnley have really struggled, who ran away with the Championship last season. So it's proved something that we already know, that the jump from Championship to Premier League is seemingly getting greater with every season that passes by. Would you say that here Luton have their best opportunity to get off the mark?
No, I think their best opportunity was against West Ham in the sort of last home match. And you can look at that 2 different ways. I mean, for most of the game, like they struggled, I think, to lay a glove on West Ham, and Paquetá just running the show. And it just felt like a quite comfortable win. By the end, I thought it was an absolute penalty, James Ward-Prowse's handball in injury time. And maybe Luton would have got a point out of nowhere. So I actually think if you look at the odds that Luton are going off in matches, and I'd put even this game here against Fulham, I don't see that the bookmakers have got Luton down as quite the kind of hopeless and hapless team that's being just spoken about. You know, this team that's going to, struggle to get a derby amount of points. Like West Ham were only just about odds on to win that game at Kenilworth Road, and it's not as if Fulham are going off 2-5 for this game, So they're in it. I didn't expect them to get anything from the game away to Chelsea. You wouldn't have expected them to have got anything in the game away at Brighton. Even West Ham are a team that I think will be, the Europa Conference winners. So it hasn't been the easiest start. That being said, I thought Fulham looked okay, really, enough to win this game, because I just see Luton struggling in both boxes, and that is often where it counts. No, but that's where it counts, really, in terms of the Premier League, where you just give up too many chances. You haven't got that quality, in the final third, and in midfield you look like you're in games, because you're competing well. But they might. That's where you pay the money, isn't it? In that final third, and I'm not sure about their quality in that department.
It's horrible. I mean, as a Norwich fan, I'm well aware you could just see the games ticking by, and you're wondering where on earth does the next point, let alone 3, come from. So hang in there, Luton fans. It could be a long run, but embrace it for what it is. Let's take a look at Manchester United against Brighton. It feels as if we've gone back maybe 18 months with Manchester United market. All their headlines, all the videos I'm watching, Manchester United in some form of crisis once again. Is it severe through your eyes?
I think that the vibes don't feel great. I think, again, on the pitch, you could say, well, that Garnacho goal goes in, completely different feeling. But, they were a mess at times against Nottingham Forest. They were a mess at times against Wolves. After the first 30 minutes against Tottenham, they weren't good enough. And I mean, over the 90 minutes, they probably deserved to lose against Arsenal. So I don't see them having taken a step forward from the last campaign. And there's just a lot of noise around the club at the moment, like who should play in midfield. They've had injuries at centre back and at left back. I mean, they finished the game against the Emirates with Maguire and Johnny Evans as centre half. Like, I mean, how's your luck? But then maybe they don't deserve that luck for the way they dealt with the Mason Greenwood situation. Jadon Sancho, had that kind of falling out very publicly with Ten Hag. I know he's since deleted the post, but he still put it out there. You've now got Anthony away from the squad at the moment, so just doesn't feel great at Manchester United. And a couple of wins soon turns that around, but it's a bit of a vibe killer, isn't there? Just all around, because I think there was a hope that they were going to push on, because last season, couple of cup finals, finished in the top 4. That Wolves performance was so bad, even though they won, and it just seems to have spiralled really from there.
In terms of Brighton, I guess a feeling of kind of picking up where they left off, just fantastic going forwards and just look the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, just a dangerous side who can hurt anyone, and that includes Manchester United. Obviously Ferguson missed the internationals through injury, would be a blow if he's not around, but they lost Caicedo, they just bring someone else in. They lose Bissouma, they just bring someone else in. It's about much more than individual players, and maybe Manchester United need to think about that, because for a long time United have been about the individual, and I think Brighton can upset the odds here. I'm going for a Brighton win.
Okay, I think I saw, is it £1 billion United have spent in the last decade, and kind of recruiting for different styles and personnel through that. Brighton, just a well-oiled machine that you can just drag and drop players into. Absolutely brilliant stuff. I sense you beginning to smile as you look at the run order, Mark, because we'll be discussing Spurs next. Then you take on Sheffield United this weekend. I just keep receiving WhatsApp messages from you through the week with some kind of new Ange Postecoglou propaganda. It's going remarkably well. Do you start to sort of pinch yourself and wondering where it's going to go wrong, or riding a wave?
Well, speaking to a fellow Tottenham fan today, who's just like, well, we're losing to Sheffield United on Saturday, but we're talking about the vibes at Manchester United, completely different at Tottenham. I think Ange Postecoglou has come in, been just a real inspiration, really. You kind of live for his content throughout the week. So honest in the way that he speaks. So determined, to play in his way. And he seems to win every media battle. Certainly at the moment, somebody will ask him a question, he'll divert it and mock Gary Neville for saying that he was copying Pep Guardiola. It'd be interesting to see what happens when they start losing a few games, whether the same things happen and they kind of still trust the process. But at the moment, Tottenham are playing well. There's no doubt about that. Been I'd say a softish schedule. They battered Burnley, played Bournemouth, who are kind of down there, aren't they, at the moment. Manchester United, we've already spoken about their issues, but it's certainly been a real positive start.
What's been the main driver in the change? Has it been tactically? Has it been personnel? Has that kind of vibe around the place made a real difference?
So I think definitely there's been straight away Postecoglou, had a very clear vision of how he wanted to play football, and that identification of kind of it being an attractive style. Certainly played well with the fans, and they've scored at least 2 goals in every game so far. You're seeing the defence play much higher up the pitch, which in turn means you've got more chance of winning the ball back. There are more players, flooding the box, and you've seen that with, say, like the Sarr goal against Manchester United. Like Sarr probably wouldn't have even been playing under Conte, but if he was, probably wouldn't have been allowed to have made that run. Romero scoring a goal from the edge of the box probably would have been 40 yards further back. Maddison and Bissouma have been outstanding in midfield, and Udogie, the left back, been a revelation really in his sort of performances, in the way that he's really thriving in this role where he's allowed to kind of go where he wants from left back. So there will be times when it goes wrong, because Romero and Van der Ven have to do a lot of defending, one-on-one defending, because they're really the only 2 players back at times. And I'm not sure they'll be able to cope when they playing like that away to, say, Arsenal next week. But I think it just gives you a good chance of winning this type of fixture against a team that's presumably going to sit in, and it's just about, Maddison or Bissouma unlocking the door.
What's your bet for this one, Mark?
Tottenham to win and over 2.5 goals. We've seen Spurs, create a lot of opportunities this season, but Vicario has had to play well in goal. Man United had 22 shots and Burnley had 16. So yes, this is a two-way chance of winning this one, because Tottenham could go over the line themselves, but I wouldn't be amazed if Tottenham won and it was both teams scoring.
Okay, let's take a look at West Ham against Manchester City. I mean, we've been doing this show for a few years now, Mark, and I'm kind of running out of ways to link into Manchester City. I mean, goals galore, well-oiled machine, interchangeable parts. Can you see any other, thing happening here other than a Man City win?
Well, I'm going to go for Man City to win and under 3.5 goals. I think it might be a bit of a grind for them against the West Ham team that started the season well, and probably a good advertisement. They left their transfer business late, but a good advertisement for the fact that you can sell one big player, but overall become a better team, because Declan Rice was a lot to West Ham, no doubt about that. But all of a sudden, they've got Alvarez, they've got James Ward-Prowse, and they've got Kudos in there, and you might say that actually the midfield as a free now is better than when it was Souček and I don't know who it was, Souček and Rice, and you maybe have a bit of Flynn Downs in there. You got them three potentially playing midfield. Kudos could play wide. You could play Paquetá wide, or he could play in that midfield three as well. So they've suddenly got a lot of options within the team. So I don't think this is going to be an absolute stroll for City. I'm just so annoyed that the nap last time out was for Man City to beat Fulham and under 4.5 goals. And, I never mind Fulham getting an apology for that dodgy offside. I want an apology. Man City only had 7 shots. That's not 7 shots on target. They had 7 shots in that entire game against Fulham. Absolutely ruthless with the amount of goals that they scored. But I think it does show that they're definitely not full tilt yet, and they probably won't be for another couple of months. And without De Bruyne, they do lack something in that midfield. So probably got enough to win the game, but not absolutely thrashing West Ham.
Okay, good stuff. Saturday, 5:30, Newcastle against Brentford. I mean, Newcastle, Mark, an intriguing one. Obviously, European football, a brilliant group for some European away days in there for the Newcastle fans. 3 straight defeats in the league, granted 3 very difficult fixtures. What if you were a Newcastle fan, kind of put yourself in their shoes, what would you take in the Premier League this season if it meant a decent stab at the Champions League?
Yeah, I don't think it's all doom and gloom, if I can use that line for Newcastle. I think the aim has got to be top 6. I think you want to finish. Once you get a taste of the Champions League, it's very difficult then to kind of not be in it. So I think Eddie Howe will be looking top 4 or maybe top 5. We don't know if 5th spot will be good enough, but that's when Newcastle need to be aiming for. Whether they get it again, it remains to be seen, doesn't it? Because to some extent, it will depend on the improvement in Liverpool, in Tottenham, in Chelsea. So it's not only about what Newcastle do, but I think from Newcastle's point of view, it's about maintaining that consistency and becoming a consistent top 6 team, which is not easy, given the quality in the Premier League. And as you say, once you have one good year, then you've got Champions League distractions, or maybe it's Europa League, Europa Conference. And that's what good teams have to cope with. They have to cope with the extra fixtures. They have to cope with increased expectations. They have to cope with, a team when you're playing kind of away to them, thinking, oh, well, a point's not a bad result, and you have to force the issue. Those are all things that the other kind of, big 6, if you like, have had to deal with over the last 10 years. And it's something that Newcastle will have to learn to cope with as well. You're a bit of a scalp if you can, if you can beat Newcastle. So I'm not ruling them out of a sort of Champions League push this season. I think that They lost away at Man City, probably do that most times anyway. The Liverpool result, was it a free? Did they take their eye off the ball? Maybe, maybe not. Then they've lost against a good Brighton team. I tipped Brighton to win that game. I was very surprised that there was a move for Newcastle in the betting markets. That caught me off guard, but probably shows you the respect that the syndicates and people that do this for a professional living have got for Newcastle. So I think you can take that. But in terms of this game, again, I think this is a tricky one. I'm going to go for Brentford +1 on the Asian handicap, where you get your money back if Newcastle win by 1 goal. Brentford lost only 1 of their last 33 games by more than 1 goal. They are a difficult team to put away. And they actually got tonked at St James's last year. Hopefully that won't happen again.
Wow, there we go. Good stuff. Let's move on to Sunday's action. The early kickoff, Bournemouth against Chelsea. We're kind of joking with a few friends, Mark, that Chelsea have spent a billion quid under Bowley now, and I look at that starting 11. And I'm having to kind of Google some of the players going, where's he from? And you just don't expect that when such money has been spent. It's been a challenging start for them again this campaign. And this is the kind of fixture that they're expected to win. But boy, it's not going to be easy.
No, I suppose from Chelsea's point of view, look, in 18 months' time, they might be having the last laugh, investing a lot in young players, trying to get around FFP with these really long contracts. The starting wage for some players is, I suppose, on the lower end. If you think about Mason Mount, wanted more money, didn't he, to stay? But they kind of got this structure in place now where it goes up, throughout the years, and younger players tend to be cheaper just in terms of the wages that you pay them at the start. You would expect in time Caicedo and all of these other players just suddenly find an extra gear or two or three, and Pochettino brings it all together. But I look at their strategy and just think the way that they're treating some of these players that have come through the academy is not great. And like Chalobah put out an Instagram post, didn't he, this week, sort of it felt like it was kind of a dig, saying he wanted to fight for his spot. And they're bringing in these players to replace the academy ones. And are they any better? I don't know. Or are they just doing it to help them with their FFP? It's a very strange approach. Nobody else is doing it. Now, they might be right. But you do wonder, I'm sure other teams have looked at this and thought, well, we could do that and we could get around FFP by doing X, Y, and Z. And they don't do it. And so you're wondering, have Chelsea sort of cracked the code, or are they barking up the wrong tree? I just don't know. And I don't think we will know for probably, like I say, another year and a half, maybe.
The defeat to Forest was damaging. Do you think they'll bounce back here?
I do, yeah. I'm going to go for Nicholas Jackson, each way, first goal scorer. He's missed 6 big chances already this season. They are creating chances for him. His XG is good. His goals for is not so good. But if Chelsea keep creating the chances for him, I think that'll bode well. You'd be more worried if he wasn't getting the chances. So at least he's getting them.
Monday Night Football returns. Nottingham Forest against Burnley. Burnley, as I mentioned earlier on in the show, Mark, I think it's always difficult, isn't it, when you run away with the Championship, playing a certain style, and then you're expected to transition into the Premier League effortlessly with that style, and it's never as easy. And Burnley are feeling that. Yeah,
I think I spoke on the last Bets Club that we did, really. I looked at that Burnley team against Aston Villa, and just player for player, it didn't look very good to me. And that's a worry because I had them finishing comfortably in mid-table. And then against Tottenham, it was just too easy. They created chances, played some nice football at times, but it was just too easy to play against them. And I'm all for managers sticking by a process. And if Vincent Kompany believes the best way to play is with that high defensive line, then fine. But you just can't keep conceding the same goal over and over again. So something has to change in midfield, whether that's a more aggressive press, a better organised press, something in terms of the forwards, because it's just way too easy. Tottenham and Aston Villa, same goal over and over again, chipped it over the top or played passes through the defensive line, and you were in on goal. And you just can't play like that. I'd say you can't play like that in the Championship, never mind the Premier League. So something's not working for them. I think in terms of what one of their successes last season, there were a couple of really important loan players that are no longer there, which means you're potentially worse off than when you actually, you're worse off than when you're in the Premier League. So I think in this game, I'm going to go for Nottingham Forest to win. The odds against looked okay to me. Also worth pointing out for punters, this game starts at 7:45 on Monday rather than usually 8 o'clock. No idea why. So I haven't got the answers for you there. But 7:45 kickoff. So make sure you got your bets on by then.
Great stuff. We've just chatted about the EFL. Let's chat more things EFL with Dan Childs. If you want some free football bets this season, we've got you covered. Simply head to racingpost.com/free bets, and there you'll find over £200 worth of them for you to use this season. That's racingpost.com/free bets. Yeah, always great to have Dan Childs on the show to talk all things EFL. One of the popular features on Bets Club has been Dan's team in focus. This week, we're going to be taking a look at Notts County, fancied by many to go well in League Two this season. It was a turbulent start, but things seem to have got somewhat smoother, Dan. Talk me through County at the moment. Are you still feeling confident for them?
I am, yeah. I mean, they're second in the table at the moment. Actually lost top spot last weekend. Gillingham with their sort of 5-1 wins reclaimed top spot. But they have had they've responded really well since that 5-1 loss at Sutton when they had the goalkeeper got sent off after 15 minutes, Aidan Stone, and it was a bit of a sort of disaster from start to finish there. But they've bounced back really well. They were expected to go well. They come up through the playoffs, National League playoffs last season, but them and Wrexham were just so far clear of the other clubs, and they were the top two in the betting at the start of the season. Wrexham were top of the betting, Notts County was second, and both have started well. Notts County, for me, have started even better. They took sort of 14 points from their last 6 games. Last weekend, with all the League Two action, I took a keen interest in their game at MK Dons, who had also started well, and it looked like a high quality match between the two of them, a 1-1 draw, but Notts County kind of went there to MK Dons, fell behind and come back to get a great draw. Bossed the game as well. Had a real grip on the possession, and that was without 2 of their best players. Jody Jones was on international duty with Malta, and Dave McGoldrick was missing with a minor injury. It was an outstanding signing they got from Derby, who was brilliant in League One last season. So, I mean, to cut a long story short, I mean, they've also got Macaulay Langstaff, who was the hot shot in the National League last season. He started well this season as well with 4 goals. Got so much firepower. Great, attractive style of play, and I can see him staying up there to the end of the season.
I guess for those who aren't as invested in League Two as you, Dan, I mean, some would suspect that if you've been promoted from the division below the season before, expectations would be simply to just stay in the division and progress from there. The quality difference between the two divisions mustn't be that big if teams can go up and then expect to compete at the top end of the table the following year as well.
Yep, I would say that's a very valid point. I would also say that just the fact, I mean, for them to get, them and Wrexham to get way over 90, I think they got both got over 100 points in a league that, as you said, Jack, is actually quite competitive. A lot of, most players in that level are professional. A lot of former, some quite decent sized former league clubs in there. For them to get that level of points and dominate the games as they were doing, I think that's kind of caught the eye of the markets. And as you said, there have been teams that have come up and adapted well, from National League to League Two before. Nobody's really come up with the points totals that those two have had, and they have both started well, and they've strengthened both of them as well in the summer. They're clearly ambitious clubs, keen to kick on. I think Notts County's average gate as well is the second highest behind Bradford in the level, so they're built to push on really.
Well, if anyone out there listening has Notts County on the anti-post bet slips, that will be a nice reason of confidence to remain positive throughout this season. Dan, thanks very much for the team in focus. Let's get your tips for this weekend. You've got 3. What's the first?
Yeah, going to start off with a League One tip. Bolton, I fancy to win away to Reading. You can get a little bit of shade of odds against about Bolton, which I think is a good bet. I mean, Bolton were in the playoffs last season, not really had much of a hangover at all. They're flying high, second in the division, got a game in hand of Stevenage, who are top at the moment. Bolton are an ambitious side. Again, they've strengthened in the summer, already had a very strong squad, I felt, as well. And they're going to kind of Reading, they're struggling to adapt really since coming down from the Championship. Ruben Sellers, the ex-Southampton manager's gone in there, got a very, very young squad. They've lost 4 of their first 6 games, Reading. I think their main concern this season will be not to sort of be relegated again. So, no, I think Bolton, odds against there to win at Reading, looks a good bet to me.
Bolton to start. What's second?
Yep, got a couple of League Two selections. Going to start off with the basement boys, Doncaster. I actually fancy them to win at Forest Green. Doncaster, I watched their game when I was away on holiday. I watched when they played at home to Everton in the EFL Cup. And
you were on holiday, Dan, and you were watching the Doncaster game.
I shouldn't be admitting things like this, but no, I was so impressed. I mean, Everton were poor, and a lot of people were talking about how bad Everton were, but couldn't take my eyes off how good Doncaster were. And I thought, how on earth are this team, at the bottom of League Two? And then I kind of looked at their game since then, and they drew 0-0 at home to Swindon. Had a player sent off in the first half. So they played the whole second half with 10 men against Swindon and still drew the game 0-0. Swindon are unbeaten, by the way, in League Two, so a strong side. And then they've gone to Wrexham last weekend, lost the game 2-1, but by all accounts, it was a kind of end-to-end game and could have gone either way. So, I mean, I've just mentioned about Wrexham being a strong side. I think Doncaster, they've obviously started badly, but I think they're in a false position. They have had a few players have come back from injury. They did spend a lot of money, Doncaster, in the summer, with the aim of being a lot better than they were last season. Grant McCann as a manager, I rate. I think he's a decent manager, certainly for that level. So I think a revival is going to come quite soon for Doncaster. And they're at Forest Green, a bit like Reading, who I talked about, struggling to handle, the drop down after relegation, still losing most of their games this season. I think they're about 5th or 6th from bottom. Their home record has been absolutely dreadful for a long time. They've lost 15 of their last 19 home games, Forest Green. So there's a lot of mental baggage, I think, that they're still carrying there. And it's a great place, I think, for Doncaster to, unlike Wrexham last week, which was a bit of a nightmare place to go. Forest Green away, great place to go and get your first win of the season.
If anyone ever questions your commitment to the job, Dan, just bring up the reference point of watching Doncaster while away on holiday. Doncaster next up on Dan's list of tips. Third and final selection for this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the team that I've mentioned a lot this season, Crawley, at home to Tranmere. Crawley, I mean, the one time I kind of questioned myself a bit on them was when they lost 6-0 at Swindon, shipped 5 goals in the second half. It was, when you actually look overall, Crawley, at their form this season, that's the only bad half they've had all season. They've been competitive in every other half, actually dominated a lot of teams. They got back to dominating last week. They were 4-1 winners at home to Newport, who went into the game, in decent position in the table. I've mentioned before about their style of play there under Scott Lindsay. They're a very, very possession-based side. The confidence seems to be growing, by the week. And they're at home to a Tranmere side. Sacked the manager last week. Ian Dawes was sacked after they lost 2-0 away to Colchester. Nigel Adkins has come in as the interim boss there. Nigel Adkins is probably a good choice there to steady the ship, and I think he'll probably do that in time. But at the moment, Tranmere are a team, they've lost 6 out of their 7 league games. And to go to Crawley, I've mentioned they're playing some really good stuff. Crawley are odds against to win this game at home. I just think that's a great price and they're well worth backing.
Dan, thank you very much as always.
You're welcome, Jack.
Brilliant to hear from Dan, as always. A big thanks to him. Let's get some bets from Mark for this Premier League weekend then, and we'll start with a bet builder, Mark.
Yeah, so Everton Arsenal game, the part of the Super Sunday package, over 2.5 goals. Everton have created a lot of chances this season, haven't taken them yet, but I think if you just carry on creating chances, you will get them. And Arsenal not been tight defensively, really, apart from that game against Crystal Palace, but I've got a lot of quality in that final third. Part of that quality is Saka was rested for the game against Scotland. Didn't start that one just as well after some of the rough treatment he got against Ukraine. We know how good Saka is. You really don't have to be an Arsenal fan to appreciate his talents. In terms of expected assists, he's got 1.2 this season, which is the most in the Arsenal team. So I'm going for a Saka assist, over 2.5 goals, and a Danjuma shot on target for Everton. He's shot volume very high since he arrived at Goodison Park. 5 shots in his first game, then 3, then 5, then 4. Been a bit wayward so far, but I like the fact that the volume's high, and I think just organically, if you have that many shots, you'll end up getting them on target. So over 2.5 goals in Everton v Arsenal, a Saka assist, and a Danjuma shot on target.
I think one of our most popular features on Bets Club is your treble. Mark, run us through that for this weekend.
Yeah, so I'm going in the same market. It's the team to win and over 2.5 goals. So we're going for Liverpool to win and over 2.5 goals against Wolves. Wolves have been more ambitious than I thought they would be under Gary O'Neill, but defensively, if you ship him free against Crystal Palace, then it's not all right from that department. Tottenham and over 2.5 goals, because I think Sheffield United have in Hamer. And also Archer, they have brought in two of the best players from the Championship last season that they didn't have at the start of this campaign. So they might be able to at least get on the score sheet. And then finally, Chelsea in over 2.5 goals for their trip to Bournemouth. Bournemouth are an ambitious team. They like to go forward. It's not quite working out for them yet, is it, under their new manager, Iraola? But I don't expect them to take backward steps. And they got a draw against Brentford last time out, but they were fortunate, conceding far too many opportunities at the moment. So Liverpool and over 2.5, Tottenham over 2.5, Chelsea and over 2.5.
Now, I'm going to ask for the nap. Usually this is our last part of the show, but it's not going to be this week because we're going to get Mark's thoughts on the Champions League. So don't switch off just yet. But before the Champions League best bets, Mark, let's get your nap for this weekend.
Over 26.5 shots in Tottenham versus Sheffield United. It's won in all 4 Tottenham League games this season. 37 against Burnley, 28 against Bournemouth, 39 against Manchester United, 29 against Brentford. You want to have a look at the pre-season too. 28 against Barca, 39 against Shakhtar, 41 against the Lion City Sailors. Who are they exactly? And 39 against West Ham. And then from Sheffield United's point of view, 29 total shots in their game against Everton, 36 against Manchester City, 32 against Crystal Palace. There were only 23 in that game against Nottingham Forest. So this bet has been a regular winner so far. I'm hoping that Sheffield United, because they've got Hamer and Archer in their squad now, will kind of, play their part in this game. So over 26.5 shots at, I was going to say White Hart Lane. I'm still going to call it White Hart Lane. It's still White Hart Lane. So yeah, over 26.5 shots.
I love that. Is that market easy enough to find? Have you got
a few people do it, including Bet365. Yeah, it's increasingly popular, all of these prop markets.
Superb. Excited for that, and also excited for the Champions League to return. It returns this Tuesday. I can't believe how quickly it's come around. The nights are drawing in, ready for some Champions League action. Mark, I want your thoughts on a kind of outright market for the Champions League first, and maybe you might have some stabs for the midweek action. Who are you liking the look of going into this year?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is Manchester City, and I do think that they will be difficult to beat. And if someone said to me, "Look, I'm backing Man City to win the Champions League," I definitely couldn't say you're barking up the wrong tree, or what you're doing there. I think that they are very deserving favourites, and I would expect them to go close. I think there are 3 teams that, if things go right, can beat Manchester City, and those are Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, and Paris Saint-Germain. And only one of them is a price that I want to take. And I think probably a month ago, if you'd have said to me, I'd be backing Paris Saint-Germain to win the Champions League, I'd have said, yeah, really? And look, they're in a difficult group. Milan, Newcastle, Borussia Dortmund, no doubt about that. But I look at the talent in the team and on the bench. Luis Enrique has won the Champions League as a manager, hasn't he? Before, with Barcelona. Donnarumma in goal. Hakimi at right back. Signed Lucas Hernandez to play left back from Bayern Munich. Brought in Skriniar from Inter to play alongside Marquinhos. I mean, that is a very good defence. They're trying to bring through some young players in midfield. Ugarte, the signing from Sporting Lisbon, I'm going to put him down as, I think, one of, might even be as good as anything that's moved in the transfer window, over the summer in that defensive midfield position. And you've got, we're talking about Declan Rice there. You're talking about Caicedo, big value players. And Ugarte I think he was probably the first choice for Chelsea, and they couldn't get him because he went to Paris, and they ended up signing Caicedo and Lavia later on, didn't they? So, a real tough tackling player that I think has got scope to be exceptionally good. Then you look at them in the final third, got rid of Neymar and they got rid of Messi. I think those are both ticks in the Paris Saint-Germain's box. Neymar had run his course there, and clearly him and Mbappe weren't getting on particularly well. Messi, I don't think was. You couldn't say he wasn't trying, but there was no need to sign him when you already had Mbappe and Neymar. The team just broke down because they had 3 players, none of whom wanted to defend. I mean, how are you going to win the Champions League when you've got 3 players like that? So, I think I've said it before. They were signing players because they could rather than they should, and I think that focus has completely changed this summer. Some sensible ones, and then you've got someone like Asensio that always looks a threat for Real Madrid when he played for them. Mouani is seen as very much the future of that French forward line. Mbappe has remained. They've got a chance around about 14, 16 to 1. They've got a chance of winning the Champions League because you're probably going to have to beat Manchester City. And that's why I want a team that's capable of beating Manchester City. And I think if everything goes right for PSG, they might just be that team.
We didn't want the obvious answer, Mark, and you certainly provided a unique one. So thanks very much for that. Should we leave it there? Have you got any fancies for midweek, or not delving into that just yet?
No, I don't think I've got enough just yet. I suppose the only thing from sort of a group point of view was I was sort of looking to get with PSV in the sort of the group that Arsenal will probably win. I think Lens have lost some of their best players. Sevilla, I know Sevilla always kind of work their magic in European football, but realistically, I like the look of PSV as sort of the bigger price of those two.
Okay, Mark, thanks very much as always. A big thanks to Dan Charles for his thoughts on the EFL. We will be back next week for another episode of Bets Club. Please remember that Mark has put up plenty of selections in this week's episode. Please don't feel the need to back them all. Only ever gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you all again next week. Bye-bye.